Hey man, today's goal is to help you build an automated drip system for you hand waterers out there. I got my supplies today from Mighty Hydro in San Diego. For most drip systems, you'll need a pump or gravity, but I have a pump, so we'll use that. There may need to be a control over your flow or splitting off to each pot, so I use these Orbit drip manifolds. Then you'll need drip tubing to get it from the manifold to the block or pot. There's a bunch of different tubing, always toss it clear, never use it for water. It can collect algae and nobody really wants that. Also a side note, the drip tubing at Home Depot is semi-rigid, which is super annoying. The Hydro Store usually has more flexible stuff, which I recommend. Now, if you're growing plants, which is probably why you watch my shit, you need a media or a container to grow in. I got these 4-inch rock wool. They have 3, 6, 8, and 12-inch varieties. These white pots are great for hydrogen cocoa in a drip or flood and drain system. Next up, you'll need to think about how you want to hold the tubing to the container. I like the FloraFlex line. It's a great way to disperse the water over the entire cube. It's easy to use and install. Some other companies make Halo drippers or ring drippers, but I like the cover of the block from the light, which protects against algae. I like that concept. But if you're going cheap, try these Home Depot tube holders. They're exactly as expected. They even are thin enough to slit the container or put directly into the soil and they'll hold, and they accomplish exactly what they need to. Now it's time for a mock-up so you have an idea of how it all comes together. You can use a tray of any size if that's what you're going for. I had these 1x4 foot ones. I like the way that I can pack in the rock wool or spread them out depending on what my application requires. So let's see what happens when we add water to the mix. Then the pump, pipe, and manifold. With any of these tubings, getting them onto the barbed manifold can be a huge frustration sometimes. The secret is hot water. I usually have a microwave cup next to me and I'll dip the end in and then put them on the barbed and they slip right on. As you can probably tell, I didn't do that on the second one, which is probably why I couldn't get it on the barb all the way. These FloraFlex come with little tube holders that angle it down right into the little mechanism dispenser thing, which is pretty convenient. For the white containers, I had to make a slit so that I could put that little tube holder on the side. But if you have a media like a cocoa or a soil, it'll slip right into that. So let's turn on the pump and get the water flowing, keeping in mind that the size of your pump determines the amount of plants that you can water. And you can see why the FloraFlex is kind of a genius idea because it spreads and disperses the water along the whole block, whereas the normal container just kind of waters wherever the stream lands on. And then you have to decide, depending on what you need and what your requirements are, if you want a drain to waste or a recycling system. I'm just here to give you options. Speaking of options, let's talk about a drip tutorial on the ever popular Dutch bucket setup. There's a bunch of ways to skin this cat, but let's do it simply. 2 buckets, uniseals, and PVC pipes. Take note that for whatever reason on this demo, the uniseals for me are backwards. I think it was because I was using an elbow 1/2 inch instead of a 3/4 inch pipe, but keep note of where that elbow is and the height of it. That'll be important later. I like to have a glass of soapy water when I'm working with grommets. I dip them into it because it allows for the rubber to have less traction so that the pipes kind of slip right in. So let's just assemble the pieces so that we can move on. This, by the way, can be done with as many buckets as you want, and as always, the only limitation is the pump. Some people do this for commercial farming with hundreds of these things at a time. Some people even do soil. I believe traditionally perlite's usually at the bottom like a Hemby bucket, but I decided to go with the DWC combo with the holes cut for the small Ned pots and the lid, and I hope you guys are picking up on the ability to combine different methods to fit what you think is easiest. So you'll want the return pipe lower elevation than the rest of the buckets because water always tries to flow down. So I'm just kind of retrofitting pieces I already have around because I didn't feel like going out and buying more things just to do a demonstration. So here's a good example of where the pump is the limitation. You can see one side has a really nice stream and the other one is a little bit of dribbling. That's because the pump has to split itself between the 2 sides and then the 2 sides again. So it's just one of those things. The return water is equal to the amount of water being put out, and you can see the different levels based on the angle of that PVC pipe. You can raise it, you can lower it, you can turn it upside down if you have soil. It's kind of what you're looking for. And this is what I'm looking for. That red highlight is where my drip system comes in, so you can follow the piping. And here's a peek of how I'm gonna grow my vegetables in the spring. So I have 3 of those 1x4 foot trays, and I have 6 rock wool cubes in there right now. I can do up to 12 as far as what the dripping goes, and I still have to figure that out. So let's turn it on and then realize we didn't open up the manifold valves, and then do that, and then you'll get everything flowing at the same time. I'm using an aquarium pump that's around 800 gallons, I believe. It puts out enough that each tube gets the equal amount of flow, which is really nice because I didn't want to have to go buy a new pump. Much like electronics and having a amperage and voltage, you have a PSI and a gallons per hour. That determines how many plants that you can water at a time, and so you'll need to get a pump that can do what you're looking for, or to break them up into sections. You can even water in series or parallel, and so with those requirements kind of tell you what it is that you need to do and how you build it. But it's relatively simple, and this is one of the easier ones. So I hope you enjoyed watching it. I hope you guys build your own. If you have any questions, leave them down below. And remember to always grow it funky and keep it fresh.